Welcome back to the Escape the Clock video series, an information series where I, the author of the Escape the Clock book, walks you through how to build your program to financial freedom and early retirement. Hey everybody, welcome to today's episode. If you've been following along so far, you know the importance of cost optimization in addition to being able to save and invest as much possible. Controlling costs really serves two functions for us in our plans. One, it allows us to ensure we're saving as much as possible every single paycheck to be able to really get to our goals as quickly as we can. Additionally, it teaches us how to use our own behaviors to control costs when things are tough and to be able to lean and enjoy spending more when things aren't. If you remember at the top of the series, I talked about some of those regrets that people have in retirement. And some retirees didn't regret saving. They were happy they saved as much as they did. They regretted not spending those savings earlier. So being able to understand our costs is how we're going to be able to build that muscle, spend more frequently because we're doing it in a very deliberate fashion, while being confident that we're still going as fast as we can towards our early retirement financial independence goals. So today, how do you afford to pay for that American dream? I'm talking about paying off that mortgage, buying that extra car, making sure all of the kids go to college, that type of thing, and how to make decisions on when to spend on those big things. That's what we'll get into. There's a lot to cover, so let's get started. There are only three big questions for today. It'll help us understand the different ways that spending impacts the bottom line. How do we spend on those everyday things? How do we pay for that big purchase like a house or a car or sending kids to college? And how about those surprise things that come up? We'll tackle all of those and more. First, we have to talk about costs. Costs. Really, when we talk about that, we're talking about spending, and it can come in different forms. First are the one-time costs. These can be actually pretty substantial, the big purchases, such as paying for a trip or a house. But they should be one time, and we should be able to budget for things like this. Next are the ongoing costs, and a lot of these are usually essential things to how we live our lives. Paying for the bills to keep the lights on, paying for food so that we can eat, or paying for taxes. We can actually optimize these costs to try to improve them over time. The last are the surprise costs, the unexpected thing that pops up, which never feels like the right time, but still we can have a plan to have some money ready to deal with that so it doesn't detract us from our goals. When it comes to one-time costs, there's a thought process that you really want to go through. First, do you really need to spend that money? Every time you're spending money on one of these costs, it's money that you're not putting towards your early retirement or your full retirement. It's a decision that you need to make. Starting to adopt a no by default attitude can be really helpful. It at least force you to convince yourself that it actually is worth making the trade-off. Now, when it comes to these costs, some are bigger than others, and I'll tackle both home ownership and saving for a dependent's education separately in a moment. They're very detailed and there's specific strategies we'll want to put in mind. But when it comes to everything else, this could be buying a car or an expensive bike or really anything, plastic surgery, you name it, anything with a price tag that's going to slow you down. You need to ask yourself, how am I going to pay for this? Now, best is being able to decide I'm going to save for this by putting a budget in place. Knowing that something has an $8,000 price tag to it means that you can take the time to save off that $8,000 to make that purchase, knowing that you've accounted for it. You're not risking paying interest. You're not making a trade-off that you haven't anticipated. But that does mean delaying getting that item until you've made the budget and done the savings. And some things can be timely. So you have to ask yourself, will I miss out if I don't buy the thing now? And to answer that, you can think about, is the item appreciate or depreciate? Everything that has value will change. Some things will go up in value, some will go down. Knowing that if I buy this thing now, it's almost like an investment. It'll appreciate. I might be able to sell it for as much as I bought it, or maybe even for more money, or it will improve my life in a way that's appreciable. That means it might be worth it. If you need to get it right away and you don't want to do the budgeting, then you have to borrow the money. I would avoid doing a credit card unless you know the amount can be paid off in full by the end of the month. That way you're taking the awards for the credit card and you're not paying the interest. But if that's not an option and you know you'd end up taking the interest, don't go with a credit card, go with a loan instead. You can get much better rates on loans than you can on credit cards. And by taking that better rate on the loan, hopefully you're not paying more in interest than you're getting out of the value of the object. These are questions you need to start asking yourself. And before you know it, you'll get control of a lot of those one-time costs. We need to be able to sift through all these costs and start to make decisions about what to do about them. What it really comes down to is that some costs are essential to living and happiness and others just aren't. And as you go through expense analysis and management exercises, especially annually, you'll start to really hone in on which of those are important to you and which you can actually make changes about. And the answer is going to be different between me and you and your neighbor and others, because what's important to me may not be what's important to you. And as you start to figure out what's essential to you, and these are going to be across many categories, you'll figure out what that minimum standard is. And once you have that standard in mind, you can take a few appropriate actions. If it's an essential cost, meaning it's something you want to maintain, then and you just want to optimize, meaning, can you get a better price? Can you maybe bulk buy that grocery out of it? Or it's an appreciable item, so you're willing to purchase it and own it yourself rather than rent it. There's lots of things we'll cover in future episodes here, but the idea is you're optimizing there. You're not cutting. You're not actually eliminating those because those are part of your standard of living. The non-essentials, though, you want to reduce them as much as possible, if not eliminate them altogether. Some of these things could actually be bad for you, and you might decide, yeah, I do want to get rid of that, and you might need a plan to get there. Others just might not be needed. They're nice to haves, but you know what? All those nice to haves, they add up. So being willing to take action now to get rid of those will actually have value for you, because that's more cash that you'll have available to invest towards your financial independent future. Buying a house is really one of the core parts of the American dream, but affording it can be very difficult, and many people will go their entire lives without fully ever owning a home. That's because these assets are quite expensive, and the amount of time it takes to build up enough wealth to be able to fully own a home, it can be really difficult, especially if you end up having to move multiple times throughout your life. But with a plan, you can actually treat the home as the investment that it is. To do so, you need to understand a bit how that special loan called a mortgage works. When you're working with a mortgage broker and taking that investment down, whatever money you can't afford to pay into it right away, which becomes equity of your ownership of that home, will become money that you're borrowing at some rate. If that's a fixed rate or a variable rate is up to the terms of the loan, but I highly suggest looking at fixed rates because it's very hard to plan against something that's constantly changing. Having a fixed rate, especially a shorter term fixed rate, means that you actually have a shorter horizon to work with. And you can be more sure you're actually buying a home within your means. Because the typical reasons that people struggle to own a home is because you might be buying something outside your means. Yes, it's exciting, but think about the financial investment you're making. Going with something smaller can keep your cost of living down, and then you can profit from that and then work your way up to something bigger. Starting too big too early can be a big way to hurt yourself. So be very careful about how you're selecting a home. Think about the property, think about the location, think about the structure. How much work is it going to take to maintain or improve what you have? It is an investment. To have that loan, the monthly payments you're making aren't all going to pay right into the equity. Actually, only a portion of them are going into reducing your debt. That's called principal. And at first, you're paying almost zero to principal. Almost all of it's going to interest. This is how the mortgage lender is making its money. So early on, you're really paying for the benefit of getting that mortgage. But later on, towards the end of your loan, you're putting most of your money into the principal, meaning that you're really getting money into that investment that you could take back out and keep. So with that in mind, one thing you should know is any extra money you put into your monthly payment will all go into principal. That means 100% of it. So if you were to pay $600 a month mortgage, 400 of that might be interest and 200 of that might be principal. If you were to add 400 on top of that 600, paying $1,000, now all of a sudden you're paying the same amount of interest, 400, but you're paying more principal because that extra 400 is all going to principal. So as you can see, extra payments is our strategy to reducing it to zero, but it may not be the right thing to do. While you're paying a mortgage, you're actually getting benefits from it. One, you can deduct that from your taxes. So if you're working and you have high income, being able to deduct the interest you're paying on your mortgage can actually help you manage your tax bracket. Additionally, the money you're putting into the equity is really locked into that asset. It's not liquid. It's hard to get it back out. But eventually, if you have enough in there, you could do something called a home equity line of credit or a HELOC, where you can borrow that money back out, usually at a much better rate than what you're getting in other places, and be able to use that to improve the value of the home or for other things. It's a really powerful mechanism. Keep in mind that if you were to default on that, you're putting your home up as collateral, so it's risky. One thing I can say for sure is when you're going into an early retirement situation, not having a mortgage provides a lot of peace of mind. It doesn't always make the most financial sense, though. Sometimes that extra payment in your mortgage, you could get a better rate putting that into a stock market or something else. But making the transition is hard, and knowing that you have optimized your cost of living everywhere possible, including not having a mortgage and having all that equity 100% in your name and place, can really help you. So to help with that decision, look at the questions on the screen here and ask yourself, when is the right time for me to start making those extra payments and reduce my mortgage to zero? The other big expense that's probably on your mind is how do you save for sending your child or dependent to school? It is getting more and more expensive every year to be able to give that gift to our children and loved ones, but yet the data has shown that it has real value. You will increase the amount of money you can earn in your lifetime by having a higher degree. So this is your investment in your dependent, and it's a good one. When it comes down to it, you need an account that can help you meet this goal because the numbers can be high. What it comes down to is using a 529 account. This is a special plan that's tax advantage and has high contribution limits. You have options in your state, likely for a 529 plan. Your employer probably even has a 529 plan that they are okay putting automatic contributions into. But no, you're not limited to that. You can actually use any 529 plan in any state So you can shop around and find ones that match what you want. Your goal is to figure out how much money you need to put into it, start as early as possible, contribute the amounts that you know to make your goal, solicit others to put money into it as well, and make sure that money's invested properly. They try to make this easy by giving age-based portfolios for investing and other things, so you don't have to be an expert in investing to get them as much out of it. So lean on the different options available to you, but the important thing is to answer these questions. Setting the goal is one of the most important things here. You need to understand what your philosophy is for their future. Do you expect them to go in-state or out of state? Costs will vary. Private school, public school, 4-year degree, 10-year degree. These are big questions, and it's hard to know what your dependent may want to do. But by setting some guardrails, what you can do is you can save for this without putting your other saving goals at risk. You have to ask yourself, what are you okay providing, and what do you expect your dependent to do? In my case, I decided that I would pay 100% of the tuition for both of my children to go to any public in-state university for 4 years. That was my personal decision. That means that anything outside of tuition would not be covered. They would either need to get grants, scholarships, or even borrow money to start building their credit. And that's okay by me. If they want to go out of state, they want to go to a private university, they will have to just borrow more. That's a lesson they will have to learn. So make your decisions. And then you can easily go and pull the data. It's easy to find out what the cost is for public universities in your state, for instance, or a private university out of your state. Use that and determine, okay, if I'm going to cover that for 4 years, this is how much I'm going to need. And then pick a 529 account that can help you make that. And then you can start making your contributions. Then you have to decide, do I want to put as much money into it as I can up front? Or do I want to do ongoing contributions over time? There are pros and cons of each, and I touch on that in the book if you're interested to see that breakdown. Ultimately, though, having a plan, having a goal, making contributions is everything, because with that money, you're providing them peace of mind. They can focus on their education because they don't have tax. You get the tax-free benefits. It covers a wide degree of expenses, and the money can be rolled over. So if that beneficiary doesn't use it, you can actually move it to a different beneficiary, or if they don't use it, you can actually roll a limit of it over to an IRA. So now it's $35,000 at the time of this recording. So that means that any $35,000 not used in a 529 could roll over into their personal retirement. So if you're giving them a double gift in a way to pay for their future, either for school or for retirement. So answer the questions on there, and I think you'll find that this is one of the best gifts we can give our loved ones. If we knew what unexpected things were going to happen, then we'd be expecting them, and they wouldn't surprise us, and we could plan for them properly. But because by definition we don't, the only thing we know for sure is that something unexpected will happen. So the question is, how much do you need to save to prepare for it? And that can be a very hard question to answer. The answer, though, is somewhere less than the overall amount of money you're going to need to survive through your early retirement and then through your full retirement as well. So you have a certain amount of money you have to save to sustain for any number of years. This is money you're putting in savings and brokerage accounts. This is the money that's going to be able to live off of for your target cost of living for that number of years. Surprises are going to happen throughout that time. Some years costs will be higher than you expect, and sometimes costs will be lower. And that doesn't have to be a detriment. It doesn't have to sink your ship. For instance, when costs are higher on certain years, if you have enough of a buffer in mind, that can absorb that hit. And then on years where it's better, you can replenish that buffer back up. So what you can do is allow that buffer to act like an insurance to be able to help you survive those tough years. And then all you have to do is reinvest in it on those better years. The question, though, is how much buffer do you want? And that is a personal decision based on your personal risk tolerance and really your overall goals. One thing I can tell you for sure is that it's going to be a proportion of your overall savings goal. Now, if it's 5%, 10%, or 30%, again, depends on a lot of factors. You might want to think back. How often am I surprised by costs? How expensive are they? How worried am I that I'm going to get hit by certain things? Doing that thought exercise might help you figure out what your percentage is. And then later, when we calculate your actual savings goals, you can just add a percentage on top of that, and now you know you're covered. We covered a lot of ground today, and I'll break it down into 3 big projects when it comes to costs. The first is cost reduction. It starts with creating your cost deduction plan. To do that, you need to analyze your expenses on an ongoing basis. And when you do so, ask yourself, is this an essential or a non-essential item? As you do that, you can determine how to eliminate non-essentials, either by canceling them or stop purchasing them if it's an ongoing cost. Or if it's an essential item, you should make a plan to optimize it. You can do this in many different ways, and I covered this in the book and in the other videos, but you can think of this as renegotiation, buying in bulk, moving providers. There's many options, and it really depends on the cost. The next is paying off the home. It can take a long time to pay off the home, and so you're going to need a plan. Developing your mortgage payoff plan really comes down to when is it right to make the extra payments to get your mortgage eliminated for your early retirement situation. You might find that you shouldn't start this project right away. If your income's high and you're still paying a lot of interest, you might find that you're benefiting a lot from that, and that this project's better for later. but eventually you may not be paying as much interest, or it may not be doing as much when it comes to your tax situation. And you might find that even though you might get better rates than putting money into that mortgage, because this is a milestone you need to accomplish before you can make the transition into an early retirement situation, that you should take on paying some extra money toward your principal each month. The actual amount, well, that depends on how fast you need to go, and you can use the many different mortgage payoff calculators, such as at the Escape the Clock website, to go figure out and calculate that goal and plug it into your sheet. But once you start that, you can know that you're really building up your equity, and before you know it, you won't have mortgage payments any longer, and your cost of living will be closer to your goal. Last big one is paying for a kid's college, and that really also comes down to developing your plan. So for when it comes to 529 accounts, research, look at all the different state options, look at what your employer likes to contribute into, ask coworkers and friends what they like to use, and go and answer those questions about how much you believe you need to save, and then pick an account that will help you. Start getting your contributions, either a bulk contribution or lump sum, set up. And as those contributions are going in, solicit others to gift in as well, because that is a great gift by putting money into a child's future. You can even make makeup contributions as they get closer to your college retirement age. You can set up calendar reminders to make sure that you're soliciting people often, and you can change the amounts you're putting in over time based on how those investments are going. Ultimately, these projects are about getting costs under control and ensuring that we have plans for paying the big ones. There's many other things you can do, such as home refinancing, advanced cost reduction, or even things like investing in homes outside of your primary residence, such as real estate. And I'll cover some of these things in other different videos, or you can check it out in the book as well. And that's everything. Making the journey from Padawan to Jedi Master of Costs can take a while. There are a lot of different types of costs, but now you have all the information you need to know how to control them. You can analyze them, and you can also make decisions about new costs that you'll incur. Only you can know what your life goals are and what your standard of living should be. No one else can really tell you that. So as you become an expert in that area, you'll be building confidence, because not only will you be able to on the gas and hit the brakes when it comes to how fast you meet your goal, but when you're in your early retirement situation, you have another area that you feel comfortable maintaining control when things are hard, because you know, hey, instead of just eating more into my buffer, I can just go and control costs a little differently, or you can lean in and spend a little more without worrying, hey, I'm putting everything at risk. This is actually really important, because when it comes down to it, you're not trying to just live by some number, live or die by this amount. Really what you're trying to do is learn how to be really fluid and ride the variables that are always coming. And now you have all the information how to do that. When it comes to making a decision on taking on a new big cost, paying off your mortgage, bringing your kids to college and how much to save, you have all the information now to go do that. The answer to that really comes down to your conversations that you'll have with your trusted partners. This includes maybe significant others or a financial advisor. If you never worked with a financial advisor, that's fine. You can really set up a free appointment. They'll love to talk to you, I'm sure. And as you go and meet with them, look at what you have, and you can start some conversations. Just make sure that you know how to vet and how to get paid, and that they're going to actually be able to help you with your plan. Because remember, the only one really invested in your plan is going to be you. Additionally, you can set up time with me if you'd like. You can schedule time with me at the site, and I'm happy to go and review and look for things myself, since I've already done this journey. So you're there. You have everything you need to know when it comes to how to pay for those big things. Now, next time, we'll go through how do you start really investing all that new cash that you're going to have? Because smart investing, that's the real gas on the fire that's going to get us there to building significant wealth quickly. I'll see you then. Reminder, I'm a retired program manager, not a financial planner or a fiduciary. All the information presented here and in the Escape the Clock book is expected to be reviewed with a certified professional. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. Support the show by visiting escapetheclock.com, where you can find the guide, the planner, and more episodes. If you need help with building or running your program, you can schedule help at the site. If you, a friend, or loved one is feeling trapped by work or money, let them know about escapetheclock.com. Remember, time is your most valuable asset. Start living life on your terms and escape the